So you just bought yourself a fancy little ZV-E10, and good for you. It's a powerhouse of a little camera, but I get it. The menus can be a little overwhelming, so let's go through them today and see what your best settings are gonna be. All right, let's get into it. Now, Sony menu systems are complex, which can be a good thing because they give you a lot of features. However, it can be a little overwhelming if you're not used to these menus. So I have reset my camera to factory settings so that you can work along with me. Here we go. The first thing is English, and I mean, I speak many languages, but I will go with English. Enter date and time, just gonna skip that New York. Who doesn't love New York, all right? And now this is just an image to tell you to go get their app, and you should, because the app can help you on certain shoots, but you know, go get it. But we're not gonna do that right now. There's the top menu here. This is specific to the ZV-E10. It's not like the other APS-C or the other Sony full-frame cameras. They have a picture mode, a video mode, and an S&Q, which is a slow and quick mode. So you cycle through those. So there is the S&P, because we were in video mode. And here is the picture mode, and now we'll go back to the video mode because we're going to start in video mode. Now it says that we are in intelligent auto video, so we're going to want to turn that off. So here we go. Let's move over to tab 2 and take off intelligent auto. Now I like to go with manual here so I can set my shutter speed and my aperture to my liking. And a lot of people, though, will want to stick with the aperture priority because if you want that blurry background, you put your f-stop all the way down as low as you can, and then the camera will do the rest of the computations to give you the proper exposure. But if you're not concerned with how much blur you have in the background, but you're more concerned with cinematic motion, what people are used to seeing on screen, then you want to set your shutter speed. You want your shutter priority. So now that is the S here. So that you can set your shutter speed at 1/50, which is what you would want to do if you're shooting in 24 frames per second, which is what I do. You know what? We're going to get into all of that. So let's just set it in manual for now. Okay? And now with that done, we can go to the first menu and just go right back to the very beginning right here. So these are related to pictures. You don't have to worry about that for video. We'll just skip to the next page. Once again, nothing here for video. Now this down here is the interval shooting. That means time lapses. I don't know why they call them interval shooting function, but it is time lapses. And this one here, the camera set memory. Now that one is going to be important to us because that's where we're going to set our slow motion, because you don't want to use the S&Q as slow motion. That is what Sony has it set up for you to use S&Q, but that just makes the slow motion in camera itself. There's no audio and the bit rate is very low. Whereas if you set slow motion yourself in 120 frames per second, you're going to get a much better bit rate, and it's going to look a lot better, and it's also, you're going to have sound, so you can switch the sound if you want. My camera just powered off because it's trying to save its battery. We'll switch that function too. But okay, here we go. Next one here, focus mode, continuous autofocus. I think that is good. Sony cameras are great at autofocus, so you might as well leave that on. So focus area zone, I go with wide. It captures more for me. And let's see, the eye autofocus, all those defaults are good. The human eye detect, now you can switch that to the animal eye detect if you're shooting squirrels in the forest, but I stick with the humans. I shoot humans. Well, I don't, you know, I film them. I don't shoot them unless they got it coming to them. So let's back out of this, and now we will go to the next page. Once again, there's nothing really here to adjust. Now, this ISO auto, I like to set my ISO myself, but we can leave that in auto because there is an ISO button right here on the camera, so that is plenty easy to change. All of these, the multimetering I think is best for when you're starting out. We'll move to the next page. Flash, once again, that is for photos. You don't have to worry about that for video. Now the white balance is currently in auto. I will never use auto white balance. If I'm outside, I'll use sunny or all of the other ones here. So sunny, shade, cloudy, incandescent, and then usually I will set my own white balance. But right now, we will leave it in auto because it doesn't matter. Now you can change your white balance in the quick menu. I will show you that as well, but we don't have to worry about it right now. Creative style, these are your standards, or your portrait, or your vivid, landscape, sunset. Now these are just styles that Sony gives you in case you want. I leave mine in standard unless I am shooting with a picture profile. And for me, I will go with picture profile 10 because I like the HLG. Now, I will switch it to HLG 3, and that is generally how I like to shoot. I use an HLG 3 picture profile, and I correct with the leaming LUT. In fact, I have a video about the picture profiles, I'll link it above, about how you might want to use those. But for now, let's leave the picture profile off, and we'll leave the creative style in standard. This picture effect, these are just little gimmicks, you know, pop color, a bunch of strange things that you'll never use. It's mostly for photos if you want to have a bit of fun with your camera, but then that is baked in to the image, so I would much rather shoot my raw photos and then in post add the fun things. Soft skin effect. This is stupid. Just turn that off. Just turn that off right now. You don't need the soft skin effect. It doesn't look good. I'm not sure who that is for. Maybe the Desperate Housewives of Canada, I don't know. Now we'll move over to page 10 of 11, and here there is one of the things you want to do here is the peaking setting. You want to make sure you turn that to on. Peak level high, and the color maybe red stands out a bit better. Now what that is just when you're switching to manual focus, that will let you know what part of your frame is in focus, and you definitely need that when you're doing manual focus. You won't see the peaking, the red outline of what is in focus when you're using autofocus, but when you switch to manual, that's when you'll see it, and you will need that, so you should put that in. Okay, and now the product showcase, that is assigned to the trash can button, so there's no need to put that on. And let's see, now we're moved on to the tab 2. So this is the movie 1. Movie 1 tab, page 1 of 9. Shoot mode, we already switched that to manual. Now this one here, this is a big one. Okay, so we got your file format. Right now it's in HD. You can do HD or 4K on the camera. Now in HD, they will give you the 60p at 50 megabits per second, 60p at 25, 30p at 50, 30 at 16, and then here's the 120 if you want to use the slow motion, the 120 at 100 megabits per second, and that is going to be your highest quality slow motion. So when you are doing slow motion, go to HD and go to the 120. I will set that up at the end of the video in memory 1 so that in one button press you can go from regular movie mode to your best slow motion. Stay tuned. But right now we will switch to 4K. Now 4K, we're still not done there. You can either do 30p at 100 megabits per second, 30 at 60. So the more megabits per second, the higher quality footage you're going to get. So go with the higher one. Your cards can handle it. 100 is not that much. Now I shoot in 24, not 30. 30 will get you more of a soap opera look, and 24 is more of what you're used to seeing on film. So we'll go with 24 at 100 megabits per second. The S&Q settings, even though I never use S&Q, I turn it on 24 just in case I ever slip into it by accident. Let's put it in the frame rate that I normally use. Hi, this is Future Mark. I'm inserting this in. If you don't see the frame rates that I just showed, like the 120 slow motion and the 24p, that means you are in the PAL region. The NTSC region is for North America, and the PAL region is pretty much for everywhere else in the world. And with the PAL region, you're going to see 25 frames per second, and you're going to see 100 frames per second in terms of the slow motion. So you can go ahead and set that here. This is the NTSC PAL selector, and if you are in the PAL region, you want to be in PAL, or if you're in the NTSC, you want to be in the NTSC, but you can also, even if you're in the PAL region and you want those same frame rates, you want to be Peter McKinnon and do 120, you can do that in the PAL region and just set it to NTSC. The problem will come if you are trying to broadcast there for specific things, like television, DVDs in those regions may not play your footage properly, and but a lot of computers, if you're just doing YouTube, things like that, you're not going to have a problem. And a lot of TVs can handle NTSC in those regions as well, so you may not see much of an issue. But where you might see an issue is when it comes to light flicker, because the power grid in the PAL region is 50 Hertz, and in the NTSC it is 60 Hertz. So if you shoot NTSC in a PAL region, you're often going to see flicker in standard light bulbs. You won't see it with studio lights like I have up. These LED studio lights, you're not going to see any flicker, so you can do PAL or NTSC with that. It doesn't matter. But regular house lights coming straight out of the wall, you're going to see that pulsing if you are. So if you do see that, and you're in the PAL region using NTSC, that is why. Or vice versa. A friend of mine was using a camera that someone had bought in Thailand, and he couldn't understand why there was flicker every time he used the camera in his house because it was set to PAL. He had to switch it to NTSC. So that is where you would do that. Now, proxy recording. Now this is if you want to make smaller files, and if you want to output in 4K, but your computer can't handle it, or your editing software can't handle it very smoothly, you can make proxies to edit these smaller files very fast and then output in 4K. So that if your computer is not a new one or a very powerful one, this is a good thing to have in the camera, and it just makes 2 files. So you're good to go with your proxies. We'll get into that in another video. Basically, just leave this stuff where it is. And then audio record level, display, of course you want that on, but it's on by default. Steadyshot Active, now that I turn off, because the active gets you that big old crop, that big 40% crop. You can turn that on in the quick menu if you want stable footage when you're walking around, but I don't like the active steady shot. It just crops in digitally, and I think you get far better results if you leave the steady shot off and you use Catalyst Browse. And I will have videos about Catalyst Browse coming up. Now the steady shot settings, these are grayed out right now because I turned steady shot off, and I leave it off. It's here, page 4 of 9, leave as is. 5 of 9, again, you want to leave, well actually, release without lens. You want to enable that actually, because that means the camera can stay on when you take the lens off, and that's important if you're using a fully manual lens. Like I have a review of this TT Artisan lens coming up, and I had to enable that function or in order to get this lens to work at all. Otherwise it just didn't work, so I enable that. And the zoom range right here, that is for the power zooms. It's set on optical zoom. That's for the little toggle on the front. And the zoom range, that is set for optical zoom only right now. You can do clear image zoom or digital zoom. Never do the digital zoom. The clear image zoom is actually pretty good on the Sonys. I'll do another video about that. The clear image zoom, but this one, the optical zoom, is for when you have a power zoom like the kit lens and you do the little rocker on the front and it can zoom in and out. And I leave that one on actually because I don't use clear image zoom very much, and when I don't have a power zoom on my camera, I don't want that little rocker to be doing clear image zooming in and out for me, because you touch that thing all the time. I honestly wish there was a way to turn it off, and Sony, if you're listening, yeah, firmware update to be able to turn off that rocker entirely, because I hit it too many times when I have the power zoom on, so it's frustrating. And if I had clear image zoom on, it would be even more frustrating. But anyway, let's get back out of there, and now we'll move on to page 7. Now this one here, zebra setting. I always turn my zebras on. I like to see, you know, for me, skin tones I often set at around 75 on the zebra. Now you can, it depends on what picture profile you're using and things like that, but you know, like the 100+ level, that lets you see what part of your image is being blown out. You know, if the sky, there's lines all over it, you know you're losing information there. So I always have zebras on, and it just lets me know when I'm overexposing my image or overexposing the skin tones, depending on how I have set it up. So let's move on to page 8 here, and we have the function menu set. Now that one is a big one for me. Like you can, the custom keys too, you can, once you start to really know your camera, you can start customizing the buttons you use the most to buttons that you didn't previously use, and Sony lets you customize a lot of the buttons. And this function menu set This is really good. There's a quick menu in the Sony right here, this button here, the function menu. So, and it gives you a series of things that you might want to utilize. Right here is the level for the audio, the focus mode, the focus area, exposure compensation, ISO, all of these things, the shooting in the manual mode, your picture profile. I use all of these things. I would replace the soft skin effect because I don't use that, and I would probably also replace the product showcase mode because that's also the button there that is the trash can. I would put zebras in here, and that is how you would do that. So, and let's see, here's how you would do that if you want it. So I'll go down here because there's one for camera for the photos and one for video. So it's great that they separate the two, so at the press of a button you have different quick menus here. So I would replace this soft skin nonsense with where's my zebras? There you go, zebra. I will put some zebras there, something like that. You don't have to do that, but I like doing that. Okay, and let's move on to page 9, and that is fine. Okay, so this here, Smartphone Connect, airplane mode is great to turn on if you want to save battery, but it's not great if you want to use remote controls or use your phone. But since I don't use that a lot with the camera, I like to leave on the airplane mode. Skip here to the next page. Again, nothing here. This is just playback. So when you're pressing the play button, it doesn't really matter with your settings here. So we'll just get past that. And then we will go down to the suitcase here. Now this tab is right here. This monitor brightness. You can set up the manual. Now manual, and you can go down if you want to save a lot of battery. But the screen is kind of hard to see, especially in the sunlight. So if you are in the sunlight, you want to either push all the way up or set it to sunny weather itself. So you can set it to sunny weather, and you see how much brighter the screen just got. So the sunny weather one, definitely when you're outside, you're gonna want that sunny weather, but use the manual to save yourself some battery and put it a little dimmer. Volume settings, that's just how the beeps on the camera, you can turn those all the way off or not. And this one here is definitely a big one, the power setting option. You, first of all, put that down to like 5 minutes, the power save. You turn on the camera and after a minute it just shuts off to save battery, but sometimes you're just fooling around with the camera and you don't want it to shut off because you're trying to set up some shot. I like it about 5 minutes. And then this one, the temperature, it's set to standard. That is no bueno. You want to go with high, because it won't damage the camera. It says the temperature of the device may rise to prioritize recording time. Would you like to change this? Yes, I would, because it's not going to damage the camera or do anything like that. I've always set my Sony cameras, and everyone I know sets their Sony cameras to a higher temperature, as if you don't, when the camera gets a little tiny bit warm, it'll just shut off, and there's no need of that. Just put it on the high setting and you will almost never have any overheating issues with the camera. Now we're on setup 2, NTSC PAL. I've already talked about that in my little insert there. HDMI settings, leave those where they are. Those are for when you want to go out to different displays. And well, I mean, I set it to 24 because that is what I'm using. And the info display, now that you'll see when you're using an HDMI out, you either turn that on or off depending on what you want. If you want the info display on, then you leave it on. But most times you want that off to get that clean HDMI out display. And then the USB power supply, that is on by default. You want to leave that on so that you can just plug it in and run it on battery power. And the format, that is, for formatting your memory card. And setup 5, the last thing, is the setting reset, which is what I did to start this video. And now here is the My Menu settings. Now these are very, very useful. Once you start to get used to your camera and what settings you like to use a lot, you can stick them all in the My Menu setting, and then you have quick access to the things that you're using. So between the quick access function menu and the My Menu settings, the very confusing, very in-depth Sony menus can become very, very easy to use once you get used to it. So now let me show you that slow motion thing so that you can switch in and out of slow motion very quickly. Okay, so we will go to tab 2, and now we will switch it to HD, because that is how we want to get our slow motion. We do 120 frames per second, 100 megabits, and now we have slow motion ready to be enabled. Now here you want to make sure your shutter speed, you see this here, 1/250, that is what you want because you want to go double your frame rate. There is some debate about that, but the 1/250 is definitely what people usually do when it comes to slow motion. So they set it at 120 frames per second and the shutter speed at 1/250. Just like if you were using 24 frames per second, you'd set your shutter speed at 1/50. Do you know what I'm saying? Now how do you get that quickly is you go over to the first tab here and you set it into your camera set memory. So now these settings here, I want to put in my memory number 1. So registered. So now, a very fast way to get into my slow motion is that if I go function button and I go down to my shoot mode, I can just switch into my recall camera set 1, and now those settings that I saved at slow motion are here. So now if I want to set up my regular shot and my slow motion, what I'll do is I'll just go back to my regular manual mode and I'll set all my settings the way that I like them. I know I should have done this first. It's just I wanted to show you how to set up the camera first. Then I did the slow motion, but now I have to redo those file format settings. But there's no big deal. We can do that, right? We have time. I'm gonna go 4K. Then I'm gonna go back to my 2400 megabits per second, and I am ready to go. Right here, now I set I set my shutter speed to 1/50, and now the camera will remember these settings. So if I turn off the camera and I turn it back on, it will be in the same mode that I set it in. Shutter speed 1/50, f1.8, all the things I set up. But let's say I'm on the fly and I'm like, oh, look at that, there's a hawk coming towards my face. I need that in slow motion before it rips my eyes out. Then you go function key right here, and now I'm in slow motion, you see? And then function key, get back into regular mode where I'm talking to, the cops about trying to find my eyeballs. Go back into my regular mode, quick, easy. So anyway, this video was way longer than I thought it would be, so I hope you learned something, and leave for some comments to questions. I'll do a full menu dive in depth. I think that'll be about 4 hours long, but I will do that sometime in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.